The Front Row Show does not reflect the views of Utah State Athletics, or its affiliates.
Excuse me, what the hell's going on out here?
I wish I could say something that was classy and inspirational, but that just wouldn't be our style.
Stick this in your trophy case.
Fall camp is underway for Matt Wells and the 2013 Utah State Aggie football team. We're breaking down the defense this week on The Front Row Show. What's up, Aggie fans? Welcome to another episode of The Front Row Show. As always, we are your hosts. I'm Matt Sonnenberg.
I'm Lance Rasmussen.
And I'm Jeff Browning. We have talked the out-of-conference schedule. We've talked the in-conference schedule. Guys, it's 3 weeks left to game week, and fall camp is underway, so it's time to break down the team, and we start with defense. Let's set the stage for this. To do that, I'm going to turn to the great Merlin Olsen. All hail Merlin Olsen. He says the winning team has a dedication. It will have a core of veteran players who set the standards. They will not accept defeat. And when you look at the core of this team and what brought championship football to Utah State, it all started with defense, guys. 7 starters returned to anchor the 2013 Utah State football team. This is a nasty bunch.
Yeah, there's the old saying that offense wins games and defense wins championships. And, since the Gary Anderson era started at Utah State, we saw a couple great offenses, led by the likes of DeAndre Burrell and Robert Turbin and those guys. Our offenses were putting up points, but our defense was a little bit behind. Last year, we saw a dominant defense come forth to complement that great offense. And lo and behold, your 2012 WAC champs was Utah State. Now we're competing for Mountain West championships, and man, I tell you what, we got the defense to do it because this unit is fantastic.
Well, I think one of the big things that you saw about where our program was to where we are now, a lot of the players that we currently have in the NFL were offensive players who got recruited prior to Gary Anderson being here. And you notice that when Gary Anderson's crop of recruits start ripening up, who is he recruited? An incredible talent for almost an entire spectrum of defense. And I will not be ashamed at all to say I think you're going to see multiple guys off this defense who are playing this year who will be playing in the next level within the next few years in the NFL.
Count on it. I think the biggest change that Gary Anderson brought to Utah State, you always had the great individual athletes. You look at somebody like a Bobby Wagner at a linebacker. But up front, guys, with the lines, there's been this tremendous change. And not only are these guys on the defensive line talented, but they're fast, they're strong, and they are able to really dictate the tempo of the games up front.
Yeah, that was one emphasis that really kind of took charge when Gary Anderson got here, was to get bigger and stronger because we needed to. We'd have those occasional defensive linemen that would rack up, 6-7 sacks in a season, but there was only one of them kind of getting all the glory, and now we've got a lot of guys that could step into different roles on the D-line and contribute in big ways. And this is a spot where we lost a couple quality guys in Al Lapuaho and Havea Lasiki, but the guys we have returning are bigger, stronger, more experienced, and they're just going to, I think, continue the momentum that has really been going, starting with last year was when the defensive line really kind of got great, I think.
Well, I think the cool thing about the defensive line last year is you did have a couple of those older standouts, but a lot of the guys who ended up contributing were younger or inexperienced and were still able to come in and make a huge impact on what happened, which is wonderful because they're all back this year, and they're coming back a year more experienced, a year more trained up. Apparently they've been trimming out their muscle, and everything should be really, really primed for them just to all have. It's really difficult for me to point to any member of the defensive line, but the defense in general, and say this person is going to have a standout season, because they all could.
One of my favorite stats from last year is that Utah State only allowed 6 rushing touchdowns all year, and a lot of that starts up front because the defensive line is not allowing the opposing team's offense to create those gaps for those running backs to hit. And I mean, only 6 rushing touchdowns is incredible.
Out of curiosity, do you know who those were against?
I don't off the top
Because I
of my
remember
head.
even a couple of them would have been late games and situations. I think Texas State had one against us or something to that effect. And against the big quality opponents with run games that we really feared, we shut them down.
And here's the thing too. I mean, Utah State opponents attempted to rush on Utah State 493 times. They only averaged 3 yards a carry exactly. You compare that to a defense we'll compare to BYU. They had a top run defense. I think it was number 2 in the country. But they faced 100 less rushes, and they gave up a 2.7 average. So, this defense was consistent throughout the whole year when teams would really try to establish the physicality, and we shut them down.
Yeah, looking at personnel on this defensive line,
yes, let's.
You can look at just their size and feel good about things. Look at B.J. Larson, 6'5", 275 pounds as a defensive end. That's the kind of size that you probably look at and you think, okay, that's going to be a solid run stuffing D end. But then you look at his numbers from last season. He had 19 tackles, which, in a split role, he wasn't the clear-cut starter there. There was a lot of guys splitting snaps, especially with Al Lapuaho still in the picture. He still had 5 tackles for loss and 4 sacks, as well as an interception.
Well, and how many deflected balls came from B.J. Larson? He must have been close to the leader in that. Just every time it seemed a ball was tipped, it was BJ who had his hands up onto it, and that led, like you said, to a number of different interceptions. The guy on the D-line that I'm really intrigued with this year, and he's been a starter, and we've talked about him, is Connor Williams. And the reason I say that is I think he will have even a bigger year this year, his senior year. The guy is not a guy that you would ever want to get into a fight with because he wouldn't lose.
Yeah, he is a very, very large and strong man. And maybe he's got some of that Canadian hockey fighter's mentality in him, where he's not afraid to put up a fight. But
couldn't help yourself, could you?
I could. You gotta throw some love for our neighbors to the north when you can, especially when they're producing talent like Connor Williams. This is a guy that last year 32 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, and a forced fumble. He's kind of the experienced guy of this defensive line, and he's only going to step up even more now that we don't have the guys graduated with Lasiki and Lapuaho. This is Connor Williams' line now, where everyone's going to look to him for leadership, and I think he is way, way more than capable of taking that over and being the guy to put everyone on his back and be a leader.
Well, I think the thing that got out, the first moment that I really realized what Connor Williams was going to be able to do was on the Iron Aggie Facebook page, which was for the Strength and Conditioning Center. Let me see if I can actually find it real quick here. They started posting some pictures last year of what the athletes were doing when they were working out. And this was when they were working out in their old facilities with their old equipment, and he was just doing insane things in his workouts. He was putting up, I think he benched 500 at some point, just absolutely nuts on what he is physically capable of doing. And you put between that, and then you reference the San Jose State game last year. You watch one play where he reminds me of like some predatory cat, because he gets a claws into the quarterback, and the quarterback's still running away, and he's got one hand on him, shovels up, gets the other one, and just brings him down. Like, it's just, he's got an animalistic instinct with a physicality that you're just not going to be able to find in many places. I'm really, really excited to see what he's going to be able to contribute this year.
Yeah, and looking at the depth with those positions too. We've got a second-team all-WAC guy in Jordan Nielsen, returning, who
they call him the Spider.
Is probably in many ways going to be in the role that B.J. Larson was last year. He's going to be splitting snaps, but that's crucial with the defensive line, being able to rotate guys in and out, keeping those bodies fresh, because O-line doesn't really sub in much. O-line is, you have your O-line and that's your guys. So they're gonna get a little exhausted as the game goes on. But if you have a D-line that the entire two deep is fresh and capable of coming in and disrupting things, especially when if any of these guys can command double teams and free up space for these linebackers, the value of that is so important.
Well, and that's actually something that's going to come up a little bit later with some of the stuff I have planned to talk about in one of our later segments, is I think the fear of our linebackers is going to open up a whole lot for this D-line, because you're going to have people concentrating on going, we can't double team because we're going to have people coming through the line. Where does it come? It's going to put our defensive line in one-man situations that they're going to be able to dominate. I think the strength of our linebacker core is going to pay off absolute dividends.
Moving to the middle, the guys that really are at the center of everything on this defense, the nose guards. Now, this is where in the 3-4 defense, these guys, if they can command a double team from there, can open up a lot of possibilities, but also do plenty of disrupting themselves. And listed at the top of the depth chart going into fall camp is AJ Patiali'i. This guy, he's a guy that you might not recognize a ton because, like we said, Javier Lasiki was great in that role last year. But believe it or not, he had 24 tackles last season, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a sack, as well as a fumble recovery. So it's a guy, he's big, he's strong. He's one of those big Polynesian guys that the team has made such a push to recruit, and perfect guy to anchor that middle.
I think one of the big things about him is he had starts at La Tech and at Toledo, which means he was getting better through the end of last season. They were watching him improve and said, okay, and those were two of our biggest games that we were going to have last season, and he was the one who got called upon to start for whatever reason. Having him back as what is supposed to be the full-time starter there, I think he's going to be in good shape for us.
Well, the guy that's really interested me in fall camp specifically is Travis Seatfeld. I mean, that guy has played well, and going against one of the best centers in the country in Tyler Larson. He's made plays. He hasn't prevented any gaps from being opened up, and he's only a sophomore. And so this is a guy, you look at AJ, who's a senior. Travis is a guy who probably is the natural successor at that position.
Yeah, and one other thing to keep an eye on is, we've got AJ, we've got Elvis Kamana-Matagi, Travis Seatfeld, and Ricky Ali-Afua, who is, decently touted prospect coming off a mission, now playing in his freshman season. We could see him in the mix. And what you got to remember, there's only one spot on the field for all these guys, all of whom could be quality football players. There's really probably going to be mainly two feature guys at that position, which is going to create a lot of competition, probably having these guys pushing themselves and everybody getting better as a result of it.
Well, now the fact is when you look at, you've got Kamana-Matagi and Seafelt, who are both supposed to be coming in and providing reps. If we could even redshirt Ricky at this point and still have a 3-man rotation at that front, let alone if we could actually have a 4-man, as we've said earlier, having a rested D-line and being able to bring people off the field and send fresh people out to make a difference, it's going to be huge for us this year. And I think that depth really shows on our line, is that we've got a lot of people pretty deep who are going to be able to make a difference.
Moving on to the linebacker position, and this is, I dare say, the star-studded position of the defense.
Where do you start?
I don't
where
think
do
that's
you
very
start?
daring to say
That's
we need a nickname for this. Like, a group this dynamic deserves a classy nickname. I don't know what that is.
I think last year we kicked around the 4 horsemen, but that's a little cliche and
that
it's
is
been
cliche.
used
That's
before.
been done.
But I mean, could it be any less valid? This is
except for
any
like there's
more valid?
8 horsemen.
Bringers of
Yeah.
death.
Yeah, I
something.
mean, these guys are a beastly unit, and not just the starters, not just the 2 deep. There's quality players and guys that
Everywhere.
could succeed, even
might-
beyond just the 2 deep.
It might be the best linebacking core from top to bottom in the history of Utah State. I don't think that's far-fetched at all.
Not just in the history of Utah State. You're looking at one of the best linebacker cores in the nation, in my opinion.
I agree.
I agree.
Wait, let's start with the sophomore star, Kyler Fackrell. And the guy is a playmaker.
Yeah, he's big, he's tall, he's fast, he's strong. This guy does everything.
What stood out yesterday in fall camp, there was a play where the offense had scored, it was like 2 times in a row. They were running red zone drills. And Kyler comes in and just kind of was like, okay, enough of this garbage. And they run the end around to Joe Hill, and Kyler comes on the blind side and just doesn't tackle him. He just shoves him in the back, and just Joe Hill just tumbles over himself.
And catching up to Joe Hill is no easy feat.
And he did it so
anybody.
effortlessly. It was just one of those plays where you go, wow.
Yeah,
This guy is good.
He's the kind of guy that, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think Kyler Fackrell, whenever, assuming he's here at least 2 more seasons, I think he will be drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. I think he's that good. He has that size. He has those instincts. I mean, he had 3 interceptions last season, and he just does everything. There's a reason he's on the All Mountain West team. In my opinion, I think he should have been at least one of the runners-up, if not, the guy for WAC Defensive Player of the Year last season as a freshman.
I just, his size gets me every time, and it surprises me because you see him lined up against guys who are, I mean, they're big guys when you've got him lined up alongside Tavares McMillan. The fact is he's 6'5", he's got a wingspan for it, and he's just, for some reason, got a nose for the ball. And it's just one of those instinctual things that you really can't ever teach, but his ability, I mean, he's caught balls for interceptions that it seems like he turns his head at just the exact moment it's flying straight at him or gets popped up. I'm so excited to watch him. And the fact is once you go past him, there's no drop-off of where things are going to be able to go. I mean, you look at the next guys we'll be talking about, Jake Dowdy and Zach Vigil, I think we've got an amazing core here.
The last thing I'll say on Fackrell is our good buddy, Matt Glade, who will be joining us later on in the show, wrote an article about him, and he talked about how he is just as good of a linebacker as Kyle Van Noy, which upset quite a few BYU fans, as you can understand. But he's right, and a breakout season this year in the Mountain West will make him a star not only in the Mountain West, but across the country.
And the fact is Van Noy is apparently supposed to be getting all sorts of hype, and he's getting a lot of credit down there. But I think the difference you will see, and this is just my opinion about what's coming, is you're going to watch Kyler Fackrell's name shoot to the top of a lot of people's lists because of team success, which BYU hasn't had. I think Utah State's primed to actually make some noise, and you're going to watch people on the team get recognized for it.
Shots fired. Let's move to inside. Jake Dowdy. Again, where do you start with him? What can you say? Colorado State kickers are scared for their lives.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that has really just succeeded his whole career. If you go back even to 2010 when he was a freshman, he was a guy getting in there against BYU, making a critical fourth down tackle in the red zone to keep him out of from scoring a touchdown. He was making plays back then, and he's only just continued to get better. He's one of those former walk-ons that I think maybe a lot of people overlooked, but he has worked, he has battled, he's a smart player, and he is primed for another fantastic year.
I think for me, he reminds me a lot of Kyle Gallagher, but with, and this is in no means an insult to Kyle, but I just think he's got a physicality that Kyle, I mean, he's bigger, he's taller, and he's willing to throw himself around. You know, he's just not scared of making the plays when they need to be made. I mean, you can almost, between him and a couple key members of that defensive line and a great play call, won that La Tech game for us in that last play. He met that running back out of the backfield and just dropped him.
Well, and I mean, you talk about the La Tech game. Don't forget, I mean, he had a key interception in the fourth quarter. That, I mean, if La Tech scores on that is a whole different ballgame. The man just knows how to make plays and make plays at the big moments. I was talking today up at practice. I was talking with Isaiah Jones, who used to play here. He came and sat by me, and we had a conversation. And he said the thing that is so impressive about guys like Dowdy and Zach Vigil and all these guys is that they don't take any plays off. It doesn't matter if it's fall camp. It doesn't matter if it's during the season. I mean, they go hard 110% of the time. And that type of work, it matters so much more to the guys like Dowdy than it does to someone who's a 5-star prospect who has spent his whole life being told he's the greatest thing in the world. These guys work for everything they've gotten, and the results are just fantastic from them.
Well, we heard it in an interview the other day, and I don't know how many of you guys were able to listen when there were people broadcasting from practice, but Vigil literally said, he said, we are asking for as many reps as we can get. He said, I realize the younger guys need to get experience, but the fact is the way you learn to play this game is you have to be playing. And so he said, and he's mentioned Dowdy by name, he said, we are asking constantly and trying to get as many reps as we possibly can.
I think another thing with that higher motor intensity, that attitude of going 110% all the time, even in practice, I think that's infectious. I think once that catches on with everyone else on the team, you get all these guys maximizing their ability. And they might have come in with good speed but needed to bulk up or needed to do other things in the weight room or develop different aspects of their game that they work harder to do. And that makes everyone on a team better. And that's why we see so many walk-ons come here and succeed. But also, going along with what Matt Wells said after the first practice, when someone asked him about how the new guys are adjusting, he said they're lost because they probably didn't expect that practice is going to be this intense and this involved. And once they get acclimated to that level,
And these guys make it that intense.
and once they realize that they have to be, playing 110% even in practice to earn reps and earn playing time, it just builds on itself. And then all of a sudden, those guys get it, and they're the ones leading that charge next year.
Let's talk about Jake Dowdy's partner in crime, Zach Vigil. When you think about the Utah game last year, and it's been talked about 100 times, but that block on the punt really was the momentum swing in that game and really blew that game open for Utah State. And that was Zach Vigil just making that play. And I don't want to say I'm surprised, but I really kind of am on how good of a linebacker he became, and he's just a stud.
I think, I'm one of those guys in that camp. I was surprised with where he came from because last year at this time, I was, just dying. I was chomping at the bits to watch Tavares McMillan go play.
Yeah.
I thought, he's going to be a slam dunk. He's going to be in one of those linebacker spots.
We started as a
He's going to be the superstar of this defense that, people didn't see coming, but oh man, they're going to know. And Zach Vigil just kind of took over that role as well as my heart. I mean, man, I love watching that guy play. I had full-blown man crush on Zach Vigil after all the plays he made early in the season. And I mean, you look at what he did, his numbers too: 105 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, which led the team, 5.5 sacks. I mean, those are crazy good numbers. He's another guy that you could make a very valid case for having been WAC Defensive Player of the Year last year.
And probably should have been somewhere on your all-conference picks for this season.
No question.
And for me, the thing that gets me about him is there is a reason that he is walking with Chucky Keaton into Mountain West Media Days in Vegas. He's been interviewed quite a few times, and people have been really trying to get his opinion on the way things are going. I just think he's a smart kid. He knows what he's doing, and I think that is really what exemplifies our linebacker core at this point. Is it's not just a bunch of kids who know how to hit, and it's not just a bunch of kids who know how to read the ball. You're combining physicality with tenacity and intelligence, and it's really showing.
Well, I mean, they interviewed Chucky Keaton, and Chucky Keaton was talking about how he's roommates with some of the guys on defense, and how he was trying to get a look into their playbook, and they were like, absolutely not. Like, they didn't want him to know anything they're doing. They are just fanatical about studying the game. And, I mean, the results show because they are smart, they're intelligent, and they're always in the right place at the right time.
One quick side note on Vigil, too, is how awesome is it that he got granted that year back of eligibility?
Yes.
And he's only going to be a junior this season. Last year, we thought that might have been the case. I think it was midway through the year that it came down that he was getting that year back, and suddenly this stud junior linebacker was a stud sophomore linebacker. We get him for 2 more years.
And I think it just blows my mind still because we've covered, 3 guys at this point? We have 17 linebackers that are on our roster right now, and obviously we're not going to be able to go in and give them all this kind of lengthy treatment. But the fact is behind those top 3, you're still bringing in Tavares McMillan, who we know can come make a difference. There was a reason he started as a freshman at Auburn. He's really done a lot of amazing stuff, and he's primed for a great season.
If you've watched him in camp so far, too, you'll see he's got speed, and he's ready to make some plays.
Look at the rest of them. Nick Vigil, Keelan Hollis, LeBradford Herald. That's a second starting 4 just in reserve.
Yeah, that's a very good linebacking core in and of itself without Fackrell, Dowdy, Vigil.
Let's talk about the 4th member on the depth chart. And Terrell Thompson, I think is unknown for a lot of Utah State fans. But if you watch him in fall camp so far, the thing he has been able to bring is, I mean, they're all good at this, but the guy flies to the ball, just like all of them. He flies to the ball. He hits hard. He hits well. His technique is great. He's good in pass coverage. Just another all-around solid player. He's a freak athlete, too. I mean, you just look at him. He is built like a tank.
Yeah, I think Thompson of this unit is kind of the wild card, where not a lot of people know of him, but also you got to keep in mind that not a lot of people are going to be prepping for him, at least early on. We've got the D-line that we talked about that's very good. We've got the other 3 linebackers, which offenses are going to know about and worry about. If Thompson if he has some speed, which we're pretty sure he has, and can fly around the field and make plays, he's primed to do some great things.
I don't even know where to start with him. Like, I think we talked earlier sometime about him being recruited in as a defensive back specifically for that speed, and to be able to bring that in and not only throw that. I'm trying to look up. He's 6'1", 220 at this point. I mean, he's a big dude who's going to be able to move. I sit and I get so excited looking at this linebacker core because we know it was the heart and soul of our defense last year. We had that was where everything turns out of with this 3-4 set. And God, looking at the tenacity that Todd Orlando brings as a coach, these guys are bringing in as players. I just think our defense is going to have an infectious energy that's going to be pretty unstoppable for the rest of the season.
And if this isn't enough, an outstanding defensive line, a linebacking core that just scares anybody. As if this isn't enough for opposing offenses, now we move to the defensive backfield, and you lose Will Davis, you lose McCade Brady, but replacing those starters to go along with Nevin Lawson, there's some hitters coming in, and this looks like a group that is not rebuilding, it's just simply retooling.
Yeah, you look first off, replacing Will Davis is kind of the big question mark because how do you instantly replace a guy that was drafted in the third round of the NFL draft? But then you see, if you come to practice and you watch Tay Glover Wright and just see how freakishly athletic this guy is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got good size. He is so fast. He accelerates quickly. I mean, his potential is through the roof. And right behind him, you have Rashard Stewart, who's pushing him.
His camp has been phenomenal. Rashard Stewart has just made play after play after play. And it's almost like you have Tay Glover Wright, 1, and then you have Rashard Stewart as like 1A.
1A.
I mean, they're not far off at all. And they both have just played just tremendously well. I'm not worried at all. I mean, I was concerned about Will. I mean, he's a good friend of the program. After watching these guys, we're in good hands.
Well, I think Camp's been this is one of the positions that Camp has really clarified in my mind that we don't need to really worry about as much as we thought we did, because you've got 2 guys at least who are going to be able to start, and I think between Glover Wright, Rashad Stewart, and then you got Quentin Byrd, who I think has been really showing people. He had the injury last year, but he's been really showing people that he was here for a reason, and he showed up ready to play right off that injury. I mean, you got a lot of guys who. They'll get injured. It gets in their head. They don't perform as well afterwards. I think he's really ready to come back 100%, and he showed it. I mean, he had a couple plays in the first day of camp that we were able to go up and watch, a couple pass breakups that were fantastic. We just made the correct reads on balls, got in way of receiver, and knocked the ball to the ground. A couple of them could have been interceptions. So I think our cornerback position's just as loaded as anything.
Speaking of knocking things to the ground, Brian Sweet at strong safety. I mean, he's a guy that we heard a lot of early in his career, got a lot of hype from the coaching staff, but his first 2 years at Utah State were kind of riddled with injuries. He was struggling to stay healthy, and then last year he finally was able to stay healthy throughout a whole year, and I think we just saw the beginning of what Brian Sweet's going to do.
He is so much bigger than people realize, too.
Yeah.
He's 6'3", 205. That's you look at him out there. He doesn't carry that weight or that size, but he can hit, and he's a big guy.
He's just very stout.
What's the example we always use? Ask Monty Ball
Exactly.
about Brian Sweet, and you'll get a type of answer. Brian Sweet, I've been trying to think of the appropriate comparison, and the only one that really comes to mind is John Lynch in the NFL of the Tampa Bay Bucks. I mean, John Lynch was the guy who would, if teams tried to go deep on you, he would just knock the wide receiver's head off. But he also was great as a run stuffer, and I feel Brian Sweet is the same way for us. I mean, he just excels at so much on the field, and he just brings that energy and that tenacity. And wide receivers, they're scared to go near him because he will take your head off.
Yeah, I think his most outstanding trait is as a run stuffer because he really is just truly phenomenal. He's gifted in that ability. But even if it comes, say we're facing a pass happy team, we got Cam Sanders behind him, who was once a cornerback, and a guy that Gary Anderson wanted pretty badly and got for that first class. He's a senior. He's experienced, and he's fast. He's got some speed to really cover the passing game if that ever ends up being a need. Now, at the other safety position, this is where things get, I think, this could be one of the most intriguing positions. This is, I think Maurice Alexander, I think at the very worst, he's going to be pretty freaking good. I think at best, he could be lights out as a free safety. Seeing him athletically, his size, his ability to read the run, the only thing that I haven't yet to see, and I have no reason to think that he can't do this very well. I just don't know yet about his ability to cover the pass, but if he does that well, I don't see why he wouldn't be playing on Sundays next year and possibly contributing very, very early.
I think my favorite fact about him right now is there is one concern on the USU fans boards right now, and the number one concern about him is he going to lose opportunities to play due to the new targeting rules that have come in? Because that's the number one thing people are worried about, is the fact that he's going to be hitting so savagely and really bringing it to people. Are the refs going to go, ugh, that guy? And the fact that's the concern. They're not worried about whether or not he's going to be able to perform, whether or not he's going to be able to tackle or do anything. They go, he might hit too hard. I think that puts us in a great position.
Well, two plays stand out to me about Maurice Alexander at free safety. One, last year in the spring game, that deep ball that was thrown, I think it was to Brandon Swindle, and Bobby Wagner-esque just reaches up and just tips it. Just an absolutely unbelievably athletic play, and it gets intercepted. That to me shows that he's probably still learning pass coverage, moving from the linebacker spot, but he's got the talent and he's got the athletic ability to be able to do that. And then again today in fall camp, they were running red zone drills. Joe Hill gets the ball. Maurice Alexander starts from 12 yards back, comes to the line, and put Joe Hill on his back, just hit him with a hit that was just unbelievable. And I honestly feel Joe Hill would have been more successful running into a semi-truck than running into Maurice Alexander. That's how hard of a hit it was. Both of the safeties, you look at them, there's no way teams are going to be able to run the ball against this defense, because that line from the defensive line to the linebackers to the free safeties, I mean, that spine of the defense is as solid as they come. And one of the things I will say is this is the number one red zone defense in the country, guys. And that a large part of that is all coming back.
One other quick note about Alexander, too, and really to go along with those concerns that people have had about possibly him being ejected from games for targeting, Frankie Sutera is pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a guy that's done well in practices. If you go and watch, he plays some good football. I don't think he has the ceiling that Alexander has, but he's a good football player who is ready. He's battle-tested, too. I mean, he'll be able to step in and perform just fine if needed. But let's get to the other of the cornerbacks that I think, is a guy that's had an interesting career at Utah State. A lot of people get frustrated with pass interference calls, and that's one thing that might be tough sometimes when you're so good at covering guys that you're near them when the ball gets there. But Nevin Lawson, he's a senior. He is, possibly the most experienced guy on this defense. Probably played the most snaps of anyone on this defense. And he's ready. This is Nevin Lawson time. We heard all about the potential he had. Tony Jones was big on hyping him up when he first came in. This is where I think we're going to see Nevin Lawson really become that full-blown superstar that everybody thought he could be. It's showtime for the kid.
Well, and you watch him in camp, and I know we reference camp all the time, but he hasn't made a mistake yet in pass coverage. I mean, he's crisp. He's directly with the receiver. I mean, they can't break free of him. He's physical. And the thing I think Utah State fans were getting frustrated with Nevin is that when the ball was up in the air, he had this habit of just, face guarding and not really turning his head, which is where he was getting the pass interference calls. And he's doing that now. He's rectified that. And you're right. This is his year. This is his time to shine. And he will do that. He will be the star, I think.
And I think my favorite thing about him is the fact that I don't think that a lot of those pass interference calls were him getting caught off guard and playing bad defense. I think it was him playing in a very tight covered situation. On top of that, I think it's one of those things that every single one of them was a deep pass that would have been going for a large amount of yardage or for a score.
Yeah.
And when you compare that and you go, oh, yeah, it's not okay that we're giving it up, but it's a 15-yard penalty as opposed to 40 yards or a score, You have to be able to take your losses there.
Another thing with that, too, is in a lot of ways, that's the nature of football these days. Mm-hmm. The receivers always get the benefit of the doubt, and if there's contact out there, DBs have an uphill battle. It's a hard job for them, and a lot of them will get, unnecessarily flagged at times for pass interference. It's almost like in a way you get punished for playing too good of man coverage. And I mean, not that it's entirely excusable because you obviously want to get better, but Nevin Lawson is one of those guys that I think has sort of suffered from that.
I remember an interview that Gary Anderson did. I think it was last year, and he talked about the difference between his cornerbacks on Utah State and the cornerbacks he had on Utah. With those great Utah teams, and he said that these cornerbacks, they like to hit and they like to tackle, and Nevin Lawson is a superior tackler in the open field. He is great.
That was actually the stat I wanted to bring up on him, is he recorded 5 or more tackles in 9 games last year. He's just consistent with the way that he's able to bring people to the ground. You don't have a lot of players who are able to, game after game after game, step up and provide those kind of numbers off that edge. I mean, you'll see people in the middle of the field doing it, but the fact is he that's a huge number of tackles on a very consistent basis.
Overall, guys, your thoughts on this defense for Utah State this year?
I think they have the potential to be one of the best in the country. I think, we knew how great they were coming back. I think all the holes we needed plugged, we are plugging in a very good way.
Yeah.
I think the only one that my only concerns kind of lie with the defensive line. I feel those guys are a little bit unproven, but their potential is outstanding. I think they're going to perform well, kind of easing my reservations to be excited enough to proclaim this the best defense in the country. But the defensive line, they've got great players. I think they just have more. I don't know. Maybe it's the wow factor I haven't seen from them that I'm expecting, but as a whole, this unit's going to be spectacular.
I've seen some of the wow factor. I don't know. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, I suppose, is the term that tends to be used.
You're allowed to do that.
But the thing that gets me for it is you're graduating 4 members off the defense. We've got 7 returning starters. You've got a year more experience on 7 of them, and there's just not anyone I can point to and go, weak link, or a position that I can point to and go, this is where offenses are going to strike. We are going to be a terror for offenses to game plan against.
The way I sum up this defense is assassins. I think you look at every position and you can't look anywhere and say, well, that's just a glaring weakness. There may be a question here or there, but I mean, overall, there's not a big question mark on this. And this defense is loaded with hitters, with guys who will make plays. This is a defense that, once again, is primed to deliver a championship run to Logan.
With all these certain things we have on the defense and quality players, we wanted to do in our next little segment 3 under-the-radar guys that we each have our eye on that we think could be guys that really contribute in a big way this year for the defense that you might not see coming, you might not suspect to be very crucial to this year's defense. So what we're going to do, we're going to go around the horn, each give 3 guys and 1 sentence why of our under-the-radar defensive players this year for Utah State football. Lance, lead us off.
My 3, we're going to start with Terrell Thompson.
Dang it.
He's got things opened up for him. No one's going to be expecting him off that other side. Number 2, Jordan Nielsen on the defensive line. He was a sack machine last year. I'm really looking forward to what he's going to be able to do. And the last one is going to be Travis Seafelt on the defensive line as well, picking 2 defensive linemen. The reason why is because I still go watch his high school tape, and it's insane.
All right, I guess I'll go next. Lance already stole one of mine with Terrell Thompson, so I'll just use his summation for that. LeBradford Herald, run, stopper, assassin. I'll just sum it up that way. And then my 3rd is Jeremy Morris, the cornerback. We talked a lot about Marwin Evans. He was the big recruit, but Jeremy Morris has showed the ability to read coverage and make the interception, and at cornerback, that's your job.
All right, my 3. I'm leading off with one that Lance stole from me too, Travis Seafelt. I have seen some beastly things from him so far in camp, and it's getting me excited. Number 2, and keep in mind, this is no particular order. These are just 3 guys that I think keep an eye on. Cameron Sanders. I mentioned it before, but his pass coverage can be crucial. I think there's times where we might rotate in 3 safeties. You never know what kind of funky stuff Todd Orlando might do, but sometimes that can be very valuable. He won't be the run stuffer that Brian Sweet is, but I think he is as good, if not better, in pass coverage than Sweet. And if you go against a pass-happy team, that could be big. Wow, I went way over one sentence for that, but that's okay. Lastly, Rashard Stewart. He's a guy that got some hype early in his career, but seems to finally be putting it all together after a position change or two over the years. Looked fantastic in camp so far.
So to help increase our hype about what's going on with the defense this year, we're going to go through real quick with the starting 11 that we have off the depth chart from spring, and we're going to give you guys what we think they deserve as far as ratings in the NCAA 2014 game that came out. We'll go by position and let you know what we think and where they're going to sit.
Which the game clearly screwed up. If
it was
you've seen
bad.
it, they did horribly. Did not do justice to one of the best defenses in the nation.
Allow us to correct
this is our take on where they should be. Obviously, we're trying to be, objective and reasonable. And looking at my list, I obviously was. But we're going to go around the horn. So what we're going to do is we're going to name a player, and the 3 of us are going to each give our ratings. So let's start it off with defensive end, B.J. Larson.
81.
I had 79.
82. Nose guard, A.J. Patiali'i.
80.
77.
78. Other defensive end, Connor Williams.
89.
Ooh, 85.
I go 86. Moving now, this one I'm interested on because I feel a lot of people might have him rated the highest. I do. I'll admit it. Outside linebacker, Kyler Fackrell.
91.
94.
91.
Yes.
All right. Now it gets a little interesting because these guys put up, arguably better numbers, but let's start with on the inside, Jake Dowdy.
89.
91.
89.
You two are conspiring against me.
His partner in crime in the middle, Zach Vigil.
88.
90.
I kept it the same with Dowdy. 89. And then the other outside linebacker, the wild card of the bunch, the large unknown of this crew, Terrell Thompson.
81.
87.
74.
I was way higher, but I have faith in Terrell.
Okay. Moving to the defensive backfield. Cornerback, Tag Glover Wright.
85.
Ooh, 88.
To go 79. He's
unproven.
Great athlete, but unproven.
Yeah.
Strong safety, Brian Sweet.
84.
86.
84.
Again, it's conspiring against me.
Well, great minds think alike. Free safety.
Fine.
Free safety, Maurice Alexander.
84.
85.
83. Ooh. Wow, we go sequential there pretty much. And lastly, this one I'm interested on. I might have had him a little low looking at it now, but Nevin Lawson.
90.
92.
85.
Ooh.
All right, so did you guys calculate your averages?
I didn't.
At
Overall?
some point. I think I came out to like an 84 something
I was
or an
told
85
there would
something.
be no math.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used the calculator, but 83.6 was my average, which if you're averaging that on the game, that'll get you up there.
This is what I predict. The defense will be phenomenal.
Front rowers, we got a special guest on today's show. Utah State beat reporter for SportsBeat and KSL.com, Matt Glade. Welcome to the show, Matt.
It is my pleasure to be joining the Front Row Show this very evening.
All right, so Matt, what we want to do today is, while we got you, first off, let's talk about your impressions from fall camp so far with the defense.
Well, I'm a little taken back. I thought we were going to review movies. Wasn't that what the podcast was about?
Well, that's for
wasn't I brought on to review all the summer movies?
That's after hours.
I'm totally unprepared for what's about to go down.
Well, all right. Well, let's start with Pacific Rim. What were your thoughts?
It's incredible.
Well, Pacific Rim is by far the most fun I had at the movies all summer.
Okay.
No doubt about that.
Good to go. What about fun people are going to see this fall, though, from the football team? I think this defense is a blast. I mean, it was a blast to watch last year, but, I mean, so far in camp, I've gotten the impression, at least, that this is going to carry on. We're going to have some more good times to watch from Utah State.
Absolutely. If I could pick I think I said this after the first practice, and it holds true for every practice I've been to. It's just speed. Everybody on this defense has speed. The guys on the defensive line, if you talk about Connor Williams, that guy, for as big and thick as that guy's built, he's pretty fast off the line. But the linebackers, the corners, and now you got Maurice Alexander at safety, you've just got speed all over the field, and that's what's been very impressive to me. You guys have been to practice. You've seen during the skeleton drills, the linebackers are keeping up with every receiver they're sending out there. The tight ends, the receivers, the running backs, they're right with them during every one of those man coverages. And that's not an easy thing because there's a lot of speed on that offense. And if I had to pick one thing that I've really noticed, that would be it.
Is there anyone of that bunch that kind of surprised you that has appeared to be faster than you even thought they were capable of being coming into camp?
I would probably say that Vigil looks a little faster this year than he did last year. He looks a little trimmer, and whatever that off-season program that they've been talking about, it worked. He looks a lot lighter on his feet. He looks quicker off the ball. Anytime he's been matched up against anybody, I haven't seen him get beat. So I would say him.
Matt, when you look at replacing two starters in the defensive backfield in Will Davis and McCade Brady, I'm curious on your thoughts on what's going on in the defensive backfield that you've seen so far and how the new guys who are stepping into those roles are performing.
My biggest surprise really has been the corner position because I think coming in, that was a big question mark for all of us. Who was going to step in and fill Will Davis' shoes? We know how good Nevin Lawson is. I mean, that's no secret. That guy's tremendous, and a big reason that Will Davis got so many balls thrown to him and made so many plays is because a lot of quarterbacks didn't want to throw towards Nevin Lawson. I've been really surprised at the depth that Utah State now has at corner. I think we all penciled in Tate Glover-Wright as that number one guy. But he's had some competition. Rashad Stewart's been good. The most surprising guy to me has been Quentin Byrd coming off that ACL injury. I didn't know if he'd be 100%, but in my opinion, he's probably played the best out of any of the corners so far. And even the junior college guy, Jeremy Morris, he had a great fit the other day in practice. I don't think they're going to have any problem at the corner slot, no matter who is the starter there. They're going to have guys with all these multiple and sub packages that they keep talking about that they're moving in. They're going to be just fine at the corner position. Now, safety, replacing Kate Brady's no easy thing. He's a second leading tackler for the Aggies last year, but I'm very intrigued with Maurice Alexander playing safety. 2 years ago, he was a linebacker and he was a really good linebacker. Unfortunately last year he wasn't able to be with the team. But I'm very intrigued by this, and from what I've seen, he's a very, very physical safety. He's making a lot of hard hits. He blocks to the ball. He's got great speed, and he's got great size for a safety. I mean, it technically is a linebacker playing safety on that defense, and even they have depth at the safety because I really like Frankie Cedera. I really like the way he played. He's a very smart player, you can just tell one of those guys with a high football IQ. He's always in the right place at the right time. He's a good tackler. He's had one pick so far in fall camp, and I really like him. For as much as we've questioned or had question marks with the secondary, I really don't think we have to worry too much.
One thing about that, Matt, is you kind of have this thing that we're lacking so far at the Front Row Show, and that's access. You're in there in the media circles so far, whereas we're kind of comfortable over on the sidelines making our own impressions. Have you gotten any vibes, or have the coaches talked much about the progress of that defensive secondary?
They just really like the physicality of it so far. I heard a couple of the coaches talking a little bit, and there was a couple hits yesterday. Yesterday was a little chippy at practice. It was very intense, and they were talking about how much they were enjoying, let's say, the physicality of the secondary that day. They were laying some hits, even though they weren't in full pads. They just had shoulder pads and helmets. They weren't afraid. They were lowering their heads. They were getting in there, and they were making some very, very stout hits on some of those receivers and tight ends, and they were really impressed with that.
That's what I like to hear. And one other thing, this is more from a player's perspective. What's their feel been with the new defensive staff, mainly Todd Orlando? joining the mix because, you can tell by watching, he's fiery, he's upbeat, and he's involved getting in there and really getting hands-on with these guys. Have you gotten any sense from the players about what they feel about him so far?
I feel like I would follow Todd Orlando into the fiery depths of hell and have no questions about it. And I think the players feel that way too. From the sense I get, I spent a lot of time. They had media day last week, and I spent a lot of time talking to the players, and I asked them that question, the transition with the defensive staff, and they all give me the sense that there was no problem with that transition. He's very, very different from Miranda from last year. Zach Vigil, I talked to him in the media day, and he told me it's such a stark contrast because Miranda was like Megamind, just over there. He would never say anything, never showed that much emotion. Then you have Orlando, who's basically wanting to tackle the offensive players and getting in everybody's face.
Yeah, that's one thing. You notice him running in and trying to strip the football from running backs a lot of the time at the end of plays.
I think he was diving into piles trying to get the ball at one point. I think I saw him do that. I can't be for certain. Can neither confirm nor deny, but I think that actually happened in practice.
The last thing we can do is get that guy a helmet because all hell's going to break loose if he has that kind of protection.
Oh, I was just going to say, what Nevin Lawson told me was, he's like, you can tell that Coach Orlando, he wants to play, but he can't. So I'm just trying to play for him right now because I know that guy can't.
Oh, that's a great quote. Tonight on the Front Row Show, we've talked about our three under-the-radar players defensively. We're curious who your three under-the-radar players are for the team this year.
Well, I kind of talked about two of them already. I really think Quentin Bird, even though he's a senior, I just think this guy, he's just not getting the pub right now that he deserves. Like I said, I think he's played the best out of the corners so far. He looks really good. He's a really intelligent player. He's been playing since he was a freshman. He saw time every year, ever since he's been in the program. He's one of those athletes that came from Florida that Gary Anderson recruited in one of his first classes. And that guy, he is a ball player, and I really think he's going to be a big difference maker for the Aggies. And another one of the guys I was talking about, Frankie Sutero, with the number of multiple defenses that they're going to run this year, with all the different sub packages, I think he's going to get plenty of playing time behind Alexander and behind Brian Sweet. I think you're going to see him make some plays. And the guy, they have to replace Bojay Fili-Moyatu, and the way they're going to do that is they're going to switch Kyler Fackrell over that boundary side, and they're going to let Terrell Thompson play where Fackrell was playing last year. And Vigil, to bring up Vigil again, he was raving about Thompson the other day. He says that he is a linebacker that plays with safety speed. He can cover anybody. He can get after the passer. So I think Terrell Thompson is going to do just fine filling in for that role. I mean, they've got plenty of depth at linebacker, but I really think that Terrell Thompson's going to have a good year too.
That's interesting because if I remember right, Terrell Thompson was recruited as a defensive back coming to Utah State, and then he bulked up and eventually moved to linebacker. So, I mean, like you said, that kind of speed on the outside can be dangerous. And like you said about Quentin Bird, he's another guy that a lot of people, I think, have forgotten about, especially last year with Nevin Lawson and Will Davis. But, I mean, this is a guy that, as a freshman and sophomore, was making plays left and right. I remember Gary Anderson raving about him in interviews back then. He actually tied for the team lead in interceptions as a sophomore.
Right. I mean, he was their starting nickelback his freshman year.
Yeah.
He's a ball. He's just one of those guys that has that knack for making plays. And it was tragic that he had that injury last year because, I mean, to have him on that defense, it was already spectacular. Just think of what they could have done.
Definitely. So moving forward now, Matt, we want to do this little thing where what we've been doing is taking our takes on what different players would be rated, or should be rated rather, in NCAA Football 14, the video game. Now, obviously, for anyone that's played it or seen it, you know that Utah State was grossly underrated. I think we can all agree with that. So,
let's say shafted.
So
shafted would be the word I would use.
Yeah. So we're all taking our stabs at what their ratings would be. So going off just the starters of the media guide depth chart, we want your takes starting, I guess, at the defensive line.
All right, let's start with that defensive line. If I had to play B.J. Larson, I think he's a very solid player. He's not He's not the guy you build the defense around, but based on what I've seen from B.J. Larson, I would give him an 80. That's where I would start him.
All right.
AJ, I would give a 75 just because doesn't quite have the experience. I mean, he played well when he had the chance, but he just doesn't have enough games under his belt where I can give him a higher rating than 75.
Okay.
Let's see. Now, on to Connor Williams. I don't feel that I can give anyone who's been drafted by a professional team any lower than a 90, so that's what I'm going to give Connor
Okay.
Williams.
There we are.
That is my feeling on him. I love Connor Williams, by the way. That guy's a baller. Holy cow.
Yeah, he's a large human being.
Geez, go back. Just when you have time, YouTube the San Jose State game highlights where it shows every defensive play from that game from last year. Just watch him against that offensive line.
It's
he is
insane.
a huge reason they had 13 sacks. He was nuts in that game. Okay, so he's a 90. From there, we'll go to Tyler Fackrell. I think we've hyped up Kyler quite a bit. Most people do, and I'm one of them.
Are you going to do it more now, though?
I'm going to do it a little bit more. I'm not going to give him the best rating on this defense. He's going to have the second highest rating of any guy.
Wow.
On the defense. And I give
Upset there.
I give him a 92 just because he's a sophomore, and that's the only reason why. If you were to look at the awareness in the game, that would be where he is lacking, just because he's a younger guy. And that's why I give him a 90.
And if you've played NCAA, you know that awareness rating always factors in heavily on the overall for some reason.
It really does. I mean, nothing controls the rating more than the awareness.
It's true.
It can jump you really quick and drop you really fast.
All right, going to the middle now.
Let's go to the middle. I love the guys in the middle. That's where I played in high school. Jake Dowdy. I'm going to give him a 90. I don't feel I can give him any less than a 90. For a guy who had 120 or so tackles last year, he has to have a 90.
Yeah. So with Vigil next to him, I mean, he's got to be right up there with him, right?
He does. I give him a slightly lesser grade, just because I think Dowdy is just a little bit better at this point. But I could be based on what I've seen in spring, Vigil could prove me completely wrong this season, and I would be completely okay with that. I give him an 88.
Perfect.
So he's just a couple points lower. He's probably a little lower in the awareness, and his tackling is probably just maybe like 1 point lower than Dowdy's.
All right, and then lastly, your boy on the outside, you're underrated, Terrell Thompson.
Terrell Thompson. Again, it's when you have a guy that's a little unproven, you can't really give him the rating that he might think he deserves right away. So since this is his first season as a full-time starter, I'm going to start him off at a 79, and I hope he really proves me wrong. I'm just trying to be a little realistic with the guy. You know what I mean?
All right. Now this is where things get interesting, I feel, the defensive backfield, because we've got, 2 of the 4 guys are stepping into starting roles for the first time. Let's start off with Tay Glover-Wright.
Tay Glover-Wright, I'm going to start him off at a solid 80. I think he's such a tremendous athlete. I got to start him there at the 80. We'll see how he does lining up against 1s and 2s this season instead of slot guys like he has been in the past.
Okay. Then strong safety, Brian Sweet.
Brian Sweet, another one of my favorite players on the defense. I think he is primed in his junior year to have a breakout. I'm going to start him at 82. He had some flashes last season, which showed what he could do, and in spring ball, too. He was probably the player I was most impressed with in the spring on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm going to start him at 82.
Okay. The guy behind him, Maurice Alexander.
Maurice Alexander, I'm going to give him the Terrell Thompson treatment. He was a phenomenal linebacker. No questioning that, but it is a change of position, and he has not played football for a year, so I will give him a 79.
All right, and then the last guy of the bunch, Nevin Lawson.
Nevin Lawson gets the highest rating for me of the entire team.
Of the entire team?
I'm giving him a 95.
Wow. All right. Well, there you go.
This is a guy, he's so underappreciated. He is so fast, and his recovery speed is unmatched. like I said, there was a reason that Will Davis had so many picks last year. Nobody threw to this guy.
Yeah.
Anytime they did, he was all over him, and he's just as physical as any of those safeties. The Utah game, the way he played the run, he was a big reason they kept Juan Quattro, John White, under 100 yards. He was in the backfield all day long taking him down.
Yeah, you talk so much about Nevin Lawson's pass coverage skills, but what a lot of people don't realize is that he is an awesome tackler in the open field.
Awesome.
He has great form. He lays a helmet into guys' chests and just will make those perfect form tackles out in the open field that is really difficult for a lot of running backs. For a lot of wide receivers to bring, or cornerbacks. Wow, I'm jumping all over these positions. Difficult for those corners to bring down those running backs, though.
Once he gets his hands on you, you're done. You're going down. He doesn't miss tackles that often. He is, in my opinion, he is the most complete player on that defense.
Well, all right. Well, Matt, any other thoughts you've got about this defensive unit as a whole before we let you go?
Mostly that I just think that they actually have the chance to be better than they were last year. I know that's a crazy thing.
No, I think we all agree with that. I mean,
okay. I feel like sometimes I'm out on a limb when I say that one. Like, people look at me like I'm a little weird because last year, it's a team that didn't allow a first quarter touchdown all season, but I actually think they can be better this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that overall the numbers might not be as good. We might give up a few more yards or a few more points, but I think that's largely due to increased competition, whereas I'm with you. I think the defense absolutely could be better than they were last year because the guys we have plugging some of those holes are valuable guys. I mean, they're proving themselves now in training camp, but they're also guys that we know have a lot of these physical tools to really succeed.
Well, I think the person I look at the most is you look at McCade Brady and Maurice Alexander replacing him. I mean, McCade Brady was a phenomenal football player, smart. I mean, read the game so well. I mean, like you said, Matt, he was second on the team in tackles, but you look at Maurice Alexander from a physical standpoint, he's just a physical specimen that McCade Brady just quite wasn't.
Was not.
And when you bring that added physicality to the team, I mean, Maurice Alexander is going to hurt people this year. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. He's going to hurt people this year.
Oh, no, I 100% agree. I mean, by the way he plays, they might blitz him like 4 out of 5 plays. He might blitz him in sacks for all we know.
I wouldn't be surprised.
No.
Well, hey, Matt, we want to thank you for joining us on the show. It was a good interview. Loved your insights. And let's do it again sometime, huh?
Oh, absolutely, guys. I enjoyed myself immensely. It's nice having some guys that can talk Utah State football. I don't have too many of them down at KSL. They like other teams for some reason. I'm not really sure.
Well, we're all about changing that. Next time, let's make sure you're in studio, though.
Yes, I will. I'll try to stay up late enough sometime to get up to Logan, and we'll do this.
Awesome. And Matt, if people want to follow you or get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Oh, they can follow me on Twitter at Matthew L. Aggie, or you can email me if you have any insights, or you can tell me how to do my job better at mglade@ksl.com. And please, if you would, go to ksl.com and read some of my articles. Well, you know what? You don't even have to read them. Just click on them and pretend you do. I'm okay with that. And click on the video that's usually attached to them. So I usually try to give you some video, at least something good to look at if you don't like the way I write. So I've got a good little piece coming out this week about Utah State and the in-state rivalries with BYU and Utah.
In-state what? In-state what?
Rivalries.
Okay, just making sure.
Real quick, last thing. Do you have a prediction for the opener?
For the opener. I think it's going to be very similar to 2012. I will say this: I will be more surprised if Utah State loses that game than if they won it. So I am going to say that it's Utah State 27 and Utah 17.
Nice. We like it. Thanks for joining the show tonight, and we look forward to having you on again very soon.
Again, thank you guys. It was my pleasure.
All right, Matt. Take care.
Big thanks to Matt Glade for joining us on the program. Now it's time to open it up to everybody else. This is the tweet sheet. Start us off, Jeff.
All right.
Let's try and be quick with all these.
Try. Derek writes in, he says, how does the defense that our offense practices against. How will it compare to other defenses that the offense will play this year?
The one standout thing that goes in my mind is I don't know as a group that you're going to see a better defense that we're going to be coming up against. I think you'll see some that are pretty on par, but as a whole, I don't think you're going to see just the ability we have. There's a couple teams that have some standout players. I think Boise State is going to have a couple standout players. They're going to be able to make some key differences, but as a unit, I think we're going to be among the elite in the Mountain West.
The biggest thing I say there is, while they might have maybe better athletes, some 4 or 5 star recruits, do they practice as hard? Does that defense make their offense work as hard as ours will? That's my thing. I think our defense will be the best our offense sees all year.
Don tweets us in. He says, in your opinion, which current Aggies have the best chance to make it to and find success in the NFL?
There's a lot.
There's actually, and that's so insane to say, because the fact is I think you probably have 10 to 15 guys, maybe 20 guys on our roster over the next 4 or 5 years who you could see make it into the league, which is nuts.
Yeah, I'm going to just throw out a few names right here.
Go with
Tyler Larson, Eric Schultz, Kyler Fackrell, Zach Vigil, Nevin Lawson, Tay Glover Wright, Maurice Alexander, Connor Williams, BJ Larson. I mean, that's off the top of my head. That's guys that I think we could very well see.
DJ Tialavea, I think, is going to make it up.
DJ has a very, very great shot if he has a good year catching the ball.
As was mentioned, Connor Williams already has a professional contract signed.
That is true.
So
Tristan tweets in, he says, any real reason that Boise State wins the Mountain West besides history? They only have 10 returning starters, and Joe Southwick is good, but he's not great.
I think Joel Southwick is actually a lot better than people are giving him credit for. But that being said, I think it's just about as open as any race you could see this year. Previously, Boise has had a lot of solidarity and continuity on their team. This year's a little bit different. Now, granted, they have that continuity and then they have the recruits to come in and fill that, but as we've already previously expressed, this would be the season for an upset.
I think the uphill battle for Boise is their schedule. That's what makes it the most difficult for them to even get to the Mountain West Championship game. I think getting there, because it's going to be overall conference record that'll determine it. They have to go on the road to Fresno, on the road to San Diego State. They have to play Nevada. I believe they get them at home.
They have to play us here.
But they have to come to Utah State. That is going to be difficult.
I would say with Boise State, though, history does matter because they show that they can be consistent winners over a long period of time. And until someone beats them consistently, I think they're just automatically the shoe-in for the conference title. Hopefully.
Can I volunteer Russ to disrupt that, please?
I accept your volunteer.
I'll second it.
I volunteer.
We're hungry for a championship.
Brett tweets it. He says, if Chucky gets injured, first off, this is a terrible question. How far could Daryl Garrettson take us? We still have weapons and a great defense. So your thoughts on that?
Will it be Daryl Garrettson taking us? I don't know. I mean, Craig Harrison has looked very good at times. He didn't get a lot of quality snaps last year, but he did what he needed to do. And let's not write off Jordan Brown either. I think he's a guy that could be a little bit of an X factor there. I've talked about Jeff Manning a little. I think he's still a work in progress. I think his potential is still very good, but he needs a little more time to put it together. I don't know if Garrettson will be the number 2. If I were guessing, I'd say no. I'd say Craig Harrison would be that guy.
And I think our coaching staff, their philosophy all along has been continuity and investing in the future. And I think they see Garrettson as our future starting quarterback after Chucky leaves. And I don't think they would want to burn a year on his eligibility just to get him to come in and then have to learn on the fly the way he is. I don't doubt his ability. I mean, watching him throw during camp and things, he's got an amazing arm. He's got accuracy. But I think that they would definitely say, all right, let's take we'll keep him redshirted this season. We've got other guys who are serviceable, and we'll let him play out the way we want him to.
W.A. Aggie fan, I'm assuming that's Washington Aggie fan, tweets in. He says, thoughts on San Jose State winning the Western Division in the Mountain West?
I don't think it's at all unlikely. I think San Jose is a better team than a lot of people are giving them credit for. I mean, they were also right there in the top 25 finishing off last year, and it seems like a lot of people have handed that to Fresno already, who got demolished in their bowl game against a really mediocre team last year. I understand that Fresno has some quality talent, but I just am not a huge believer yet, whereas San Jose returns a lot of quality talent from what was already a great team.
And I think the big thing for me is the same gripe people have with our team and why we keep getting kind of neglected when people are looking at preseason. It's going to ride on that coaching staff.
Yeah.
The players have proven themselves. I think they're returning enough people down there that you're going to watch that be. It is, in my opinion, probably one of the more dangerous games we're going to play this year. It's all going to come down onto what that new coaching staff can implement, who they're bringing in, and how their players receive them.
Scott tweets in, he says, any insight on the projected strength of our special teams this year?
They're putting in a lot of time in it on camp. And I think that was something that got pointed out in a couple of the media reviews, that they're definitely making sure that that is something that gets addressed. The fact is you see a lot of your guys who are not starting and you're not contributing majorly in ways coming up and playing special teams for you. And I think one of the big interviews that I actually, there was a former player who talked about the fact that when Kevin Robinson was making punt returns and kickoff returns from us a few years ago, the rest of the team was pretty abysmal. But those special teams guys who were the third and fourth strings players said, we're going to step up together and we're going to be the best special teams in the nation. And the fact is they were. Like, they came in and made an impact. I think the attitude that is coming into the camp this year is going to be infectious, and you're going to watch effort. And the fact is there's talent there that hasn't been there and speed there that hasn't been there before. I think our special teams are going to get shored up this year.
I think that's the main thing, is the talent level from top to bottom is better. We don't just have great players at the top. We've got great players behind them. And we talked about the depth of the linebacker core. If those guys want to see the field, coaches are probably going to tell them, get it done on special teams. That's your chance to get on the field and make an impression. Look at Joey DiMartino last year. That hit he delivered on a special teams play against Idaho. I mean, he wasn't getting carries, but everyone remembers that hit because Joey D murdered that guy.
Well, and there were several of them. People, that one hit sticks out, but he had several hits where he just got behind blockers and made plays on special teams. And it's showing because he's getting attention this year. And
I think all in all, the special teams should be solidly improved this season over last.
It will no longer be a weakness. And I think that's something that we've pointed out before. In a lot of our big games, our special teams has come up a little short.
T. Wade tweets in, last question. He says, from what I am reading, the Utes are very amped to get revenge. Are we going to be able to match their intensity?
That's the intrigue with this game. We've got to prove that we're not missing a beat with the new head coach. They want to prove that last season was an anomaly and that they're going to bounce back to being the power program that they have been for the bulk of the last decade.
I think Matt Wells really put it the best when we were talking to him in our interview when he said, it's not going to be me going and needing to get these guys pumped up. If anything, we'll be calming them down. But he talked about the fact that it's who is going to be able to take that energy and that enthusiasm and channel it into a focused beam. And I think that the deciding factor in who is able to do that is experience. Who is able to come in and say, this is what I've done in the past, and is able to focus that like that. Experience gives us the edge in that game. So that is my opinion, is our experience and the fact that we're returning so many guys is going to give us the edge.
And it's not just who's the most intense in a game, it's who executes the best,
exactly.
like Matt Wells said. In a game like this with so many starters returning, you got to like Utah State's chances in that game. Although Utah will be amped up, and good. It's about time that this rivalry has some juice to it. Thank you, everyone, for tweeting in to the tweet sheet. Always enjoy your questions. Remember to tweet them at us at USU Front Row. Use the hashtag tweetsheet. Makes it a little bit easier to find the questions. Thanks for everyone who listened to Rock Jocks. They debuted on the Front Row Network, and good success.
Shout out to Preston Croshaw and Steve Swartzman. They've done a
great
job over there.
Remember to check out all the shows on the Front Row Network and interact with them on Twitter. Junkies, Agent 33, Agent 71. Make sure you're following them, getting involved with them. They're going to be bringing you some great stuff on the Front Row Network. And we'll do our part as well here on the Front Row Show. So for the Front Row Show, I'm Jeff Browning.
I'm Lance Rasmussen.
And I'm Matt Sonnenberg.
Go Aggies!
My family prepared to die type of vengeance. So, like, he fucking lost it and is does not give a shit what extreme measures he goes to. He is going to unleash his unholy wrath. Get it? Unholy, because holy.
Oh, no,
when
I
you
get it,
cast
because when he cast it,
it's
yeah.
Okay,
No, anyway.
he's going to cast unholy wrath on the world and destroy everyone. You know why? Because them for f***ing with me.
The problem with 7 in my mind is it's when you start getting into the ridiculously convoluted storylines. When they're like, all of this ridiculous backstory that has no, 6 was plain. It was a good story. You could sit and read it as a novel. You had characters that you cared about, every single one of them. There was no Kate Sith in 6. No one was like, I don't like that guy. There was not a character who is not a viable option anywhere in that game.
But there's some characters where you're like, okay, you're in my party. Off now.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't use them.
Go-Go? Who uses Go-Go?
Well,
Nobody uses Go-Go.
Who actually goes and gets Go-Go at this point in time?
I mean,
you got to go through stomachs.
You can ditch Kate Sith into obscurity and never need to use him.
But
Vincent Valentine is a badass.
So is what?
Umaro. Yeah, I know.
Cyan.
Oh, Cyan's amazing.
Watch it.
Look,
watch
I
that
said
meter
it's a
fill up,
close
and all of a sudden
second.
you go in, and he
It's
can just
one
go
of my
sword swipe an
favorite
entire
games ever.
squad.
It's such an unbelievably phenomenal game, and it has the best soundtrack of any game
Amen.
ever.
Did you?
No
I
question.
assume you went and downloaded the whole thing.
Yeah, I did.
God, it's incredible.
It's good.
I still listen to it just about everywhere I
But
go.
7 made me feel more, and the Chocobo racing. Oh my Chocobo racing.
Dude, the first time you got on the Chocobo in any of those games, the other thing that gets me about 6 is it's the first time that Chocobo theme shows up, isn't it?
No, it's in 4 at least.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. The
Hold on. Here, give me the headphone port. We're gonna put it over the mics. Or I can just play it on my speaker, and we'll actually have it play.
I watched some Final Fantasy history thing the other day, and the Chocobos first appeared, I believe, in Japanese Final Fantasy 2. Yeah, you got a text.
But yeah, no, I have a hard time not just loving 6 out of its mind.
Because it's...
And the fact is, and this is going to sound very blasphemous of me, but I think 7 has been elevated to an unholy level of untouchability for criticism these days. The same way that Ocarina of Time has.
See, I feel 7 gets a fair amount of criticism for some of the same reasons you point out. The graphics didn't hold up great over time. I mean, there's a lot of things in it that don't make sense, like... Why did Barrett decide to have his hand replaced with an arm cannon?
Okay, well, first of all, let me ask you, hey, Matt, you want to replace your arm with an arm cannon?
Well, I'd say yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it doesn't need much explanation.
But, well, actually, no, because it would impede my Ninja Warrior training.
Yeah, but then you could just walk in with an arm cannon.
I could.
This is why Jeff doesn't want to play with us.
No, Jeff, just come play Final Fantasy with us. It'll be fun. Hey Aggie fans, thanks again for listening to this episode of The Front Row Show. Be sure to download all our archived episodes on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at USU Front Row, like our page on Facebook at facebook.com/USU Front Row, and subscribe to us on our new YouTube channel at youtube.com/USU Front Row. Go Aggies!